This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. It is not intended to cause or induce breach of an existing agency agreement.
Okay, so we're here with Jenny Konkin. She is the president and CEO, co-founder of Wholeway House. And I got to say it because you were top 40 under 40, which is a big deal.
No big deal.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Jenny, and nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here. It was great to have you guys down at Wholeway House.
Yeah, we were down at Wholeway House. It's and heard a bit about the story, which is incredible. Maybe for people who have not heard of Wholeway House, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Wholeway House?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Wholeway House, we partner with nonprofit housing providers to provide on-site community building programs and tenant support services for low-income seniors, veterans, people in transition out of recovery and homelessness, to ensure that they don't just have housing, but they have a home. So we're there to build healthy communities in housing. We're mostly in the Downtown Eastside, but we've now grown across the Lower Mainland, which is really exciting.
And Wholeway House hasn't been around all that long.
No, we just had our 10-year anniversary. So we were founded in 2013, and we started actually, my grandparents used to own SROs in the Downtown Eastside. So although Wholeway House was only 10 years old, I've been around the Downtown Eastside my entire life, which is very close to my heart. So.
One thing we haven't talked about, but your grandparents, were they real estate investors, or how did they get into owning the SROs?
Yeah, so they have a very classic Vancouver immigrant story. They came to Canada really wanting to have a better life for their family. And my grandfather was working with churches, and he didn't want to take a salary from the church. So on the side, they started developing real estate to provide income for their family. And my grandmother was very business savvy, although she had like a grade 3 education and barely spoke English, still barely speaks English, but very Italian go-getter. And she was able to purchase these buildings in the Downtown Eastside. So, back then they were called hotels. It was the Silver and Avalon Hotel. And eventually they were turned into single-room occupancy buildings. But growing up, I watched my grandmother. Those were the buildings that she never sold. They were so close to her heart. And it was mostly single men who were either looking for work kind of in industrial neighborhood there and living on their own, often with different struggles and barriers. Maybe they struggle with addiction or mental health issues. But she really became like the mom or the grandma, the nona to everybody, cooking for them and taking care of them. And growing up, I always heard her like yelling in the hallways. My grandfather would be like fixing a sink or something. And she's like, Mr. McGill, you have to get up. You take a shower today. She was really like, she played that motherly role in their lives. So I think that really brought that into our family, that to care for people who were struggling or who were hurting.
So maybe can we? Because I remember when we were talking offline about it, you mentioned your nona yelling at hey, yelling up the stairs and things like that, and it strikes me as that Wholeway House kind of has a similar, like there's a clear through line in this in how communities created between your nona and now. Did in your mind did the hotels or the SROs that your grandparents run, like, were they different than other SROs at the time in the Downtown Eastside?
Yeah, I think there was always something very special there. Often, even as I took over running the buildings, my always people remembered my grandparents. I've heard story after story. Your grandfather saved my life. I wouldn't have come out of this if they had not given me a place to stay. I had no money. Or your grandparents would give me little odd jobs. They gave me a hand up. And that really inspired, to be honest, how we started Wholeway House. And I'll just share, like, when my brother and I first took over managing the buildings, we came in thinking we'd both come from very successful careers. I'd been doing real estate as well as working in the restaurant industry. My brother was getting into engineering, and we just thought we would come in and like save the Downtown Eastside? Like, why can't we fix all these problems? We'll just hook everyone up with jobs. I'll write them resumes and we'll get clothes and food and kind of that outward thing that we all see as we go through the Downtown Eastside. Like, why can't we just clean this up? And as we began to work there, we really recognized that, yes, those were issues. Those are things that we need to work on. However, the core issue that we were facing was such isolation and loneliness. People living under shame, and so they're not even accessing the resources or getting the help that they need and deserve to really take a step forward in their lives. And that was something I think my grandparents gave them, was dignity. There was always a sense of like family there, but and like very unconditional love. However, as anyone knows, in a family and with love, that comes with accountability, that comes with dignity, that comes with an exchange of respect. And so there was really like, I remember my grandfather ran a tight ship. And when I took over, I did the same thing. When someone would move in, I'm like, hey, I would love for you to live here. We really want to create this really safe and healthy environment for you to live in. I believe everyone deserves a good night's sleep and, to not be afraid in your own home. But that means contribution. That means if you're going to live here, do you want to be a part of that? Do you want to contribute to following those rules and having a safe space to live? And so that's really how we got started.
So it sounds almost like it doesn't matter how many resources you throw at the problem if at the individual level people aren't willing to accept. So that sounds like a broken system that you went into.
Absolutely. And we really saw, I went in as a taxpayer going, I don't want to start another thing. I don't want to start another thing if it's already being done. So my brother and I, my brother's name is Josh, we really sat down and thought about this. We're like, well, what did we have that somebody here didn't have? What was the difference? And really, there was that sense of family and support and health. And we saw that wasn't there. And so people were so disconnected. When I first got there, in the first few months, there was a gentleman who passed away in his room. And I'd never had to deal with something like that before. It was really heartbreaking for me. But as I went, I was like, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. And I'm asking the other 84 tenants in the building, who was this guy? Who do I phone? Did he have family? Did he have an ex-wife? Anyone I can call? And everyone's like, knew nothing about him. Most of them didn't even know his name. And I realized, I'm like, I might not be able to fix the entire Downtown Eastside, but I can fix that. People don't need to live completely alone and then die alone. And really, we saw that people were so disconnected. They felt so isolated that there was no health or community. So we really started with something so simple. I started like pounding the pavement, finding out who was out there that we could partner with. I didn't want to start spending money on things that already exist. Also, we had no funding, so everything's going on my credit card. And we started with like a simple family dinner. We need to sit down. We need to eat together, not sit in a food lineup or stand in a food lineup and then go eat by yourself. That's such a cycle of depression. That's such a cycle of
I remember you saying that before, and sorry to cut you off, but that people would get food and then take it back to their rooms. Yeah. And then and you change that.
Yeah. So what we saw was people relied on food lineups and then you eat alone. And so the first time I ever made a family dinner, I was so excited. I partnered with Quest Food Exchange. They gave me all this tortellini. And I was like, amazing. I can work with tortellini. So I'm like cooking all day for 85 men. Most of the men who lived in our building had come, out of the system, been through incarceration, been homelessness, all different stories. And so as I was cooking and preparing, I wanted it to look really beautiful. I came from restaurants. I set up the tables. I, made it feel really nice, had music on. And as I'm preparing, nobody was coming down. And I'm like, okay, it's okay. Like, they're shy. And at 4:00 when dinner's supposed to start, I still have nobody there. And now I'm mad because my food's getting cold. I'm like, well, I'm just going to go upstairs and yell like my nonna would. I'm like, I'm just going to go bring them downstairs. And honestly, as I turned the corner, the guys had actually started lining up. They brought their own plates. I was like, no, this isn't a food lineup. Like, we're going to sit down and we're going to eat together. And it took a while to break that habit. It took a while to build that culture of community and enjoying a meal. Like, I think that's so special, and it's something that got lost. But also then what I saw was every time I did a family dinner, which was every Wednesday, they wanted to help. So they would come down beforehand and be like, can I help with something? Do you need anything? And so they would set the tables, or they would stay afterwards and help with the dishes. And I was like, that's human nature. We don't want a handout. We want a hand up. Sometimes I need help. Absolutely. All of us need help at some point. But they were really looking to be able to contribute as well. And I think especially working with men who had previously maybe worked in a trade or worked in different industries and now didn't have an opportunity, they want to feel useful. They want to feel purpose. And every person has gifts and talents. And when we solely do aid, and we see this obviously in the Downtown Eastside, it strips away people's pride. It strips away their opportunity to give. And no matter what that is, if it's helping set a table, or if it's, doing art, or it's doing something that you feel important and you feel, special, that's going to rebuild somebody. And that was the second issue that we saw, was they didn't have an opportunity to have purpose. And so at Whole Way House, our three pillars are reconnect, rebuild, and recenter. And that rebuild is giving people a chance to have a hand up, to say, what can you do? How do you want to help? And people want to help. And I think when we take that away, we're not allowing people to grow, and we're not allowing people to, we're going to still see this cycle. This cycle will continue unless we give people an opportunity to contribute. And for everybody, that's different. That doesn't mean everybody goes and gets a 40-hour-a-week job. That means, what do you have to contribute?
Right.
What do you want to do today? And until they reconnect first and have that safe place to have community, to have health, that rebuild won't come either.
This is a really big question, and I'm not sure. It seems like we could talk about this for hours. But what have we got wrong with the Downtown Eastside?
That's a tiny question. I don't know what you're talking about.
But wait a second. Before we get to that, I just have one question about nuts and bolts about because one thing that's a little bit unclear to me is you were in the private sector. You were in real estate and the restaurant industry. Your brother was too. Did you think you'd end up running an organization like the Whole Way House? And then we can kind of get to the bigger issues.
Yeah.
But I mean, can we talk about the steps? What happened in your life through seeing your Nona running an SRO to Whole Way House? Because they're very different things as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I never saw myself running a charity. In fact, when I first started, I truly felt so unequipped. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So in 2009, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He was only 48 years old. We were just talking about, we were all just coming into our 40s. It was really shocking for me. And I felt like I had lost this sense of control in my corporate life. I was definitely a workaholic. I was always trying to prove myself. I always wanted to feel good enough. And I'll be honest, I just had this moment of surrender to God. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And please don't take my dad. And I just was, so at that time, I wanted to spend more time with my family. I realized if I stayed in that world that I was in, I wasn't going to make that a priority. And so I went to work with my parents, had a marriage seminar, and I was helping them behind the scenes with some PR, but also at the same time went to help my grandparents. My grandfather had passed away. So I was helping my grandmother run the buildings. And even at that time, I still didn't picture running a charity. I just was going to be a building manager. And when that gentleman passed away, his name was Jean-Francois. And when he passed away, I realized this was my purpose, was to help people recognize that they have worth and value, and that there's something else for them. I also really saw that a lot of the people that we were working with had never seen what could be possible, what is possible on the other side. They were always just being told this is okay. And I was like, that's not okay. And I'd love to show you what is possible. What can love do? What can, dignity and worth and value do? And so when we first started, for the first 2 years, we didn't start a charity. We were just working in the building, getting to know people, getting to know their names. I realized nobody took the time to get to know their names. And so through that, then I was surrounded by incredible people who supported us. Like the president of Union Gospel Mission joined our board of directors. We started a board of directors, had a lawyer reach out and do all of our everything for free. To this day, 10 years later, she still does everything for us for free. So it was like this business community came around me. The church came, other people were just like, how can we help? How can we help? And I really want to point that out. I couldn't have done what I did without experts in their own field. A graphic designer who I knew reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm building my portfolio. Can I do a logo for you? Can I help you design your website?" Other people, someone made us an app. It was incredible. And I believe we had no funding for years. We had no funding, and we were able to do it because a business community said, I can't run a charity, but I can donate these services to you. And that was phenomenal for us. So when we finally started Whole Way House, again, we just didn't have government funding until years later. And in 2017, BC Housing approached us and said, hey, what you're doing is helping stabilize housing. To be honest, the ripple effect. And so the programs that we run are things like morning coffee, family dinners, games, and then we do support services. So we help coordinate, medical appointments, things like that. But it was truly from that as a landlord, my job became so easy. It went from people fighting and neighbors breaking things. We had 134 infractions on our first City of Vancouver inspection. I thought they were going to shut us down. It was mostly caused by tenants. And by our fourth inspection, we had 3 infractions because the tenants were so proud of their homes. They had a place where they felt respected and they felt dignified because they were upheld to a standard to say, I believe in you. You are a contributing member of society and this can be a home. And we really saw such a change. So when BC Housing came, we were able to replicate our programs to a building for seniors and veterans who had been homeless. And we were able to really create programs that were designed for them. But exact same concept. Humans need connection, but not just connection and community, because there's community, but then there's healthy community. And I think, we all know you become like the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with, right? And so when you're around chaos all the time, that's what we see right now in the Downtown Eastside. And when to your question, until we create health and healing, nothing will change. We can build unit after unit after unit. And of course, we need housing. But I often say, I'm like, yes, we are facing a housing crisis. But until we face the heart crisis, we will not see change. Until we start helping people heal from the trauma that they've experienced, start feeling like they are actually a valuable member of society. And we want to have that exchange. We want to be contributing together, we won't see a change.
One thing that, and we kind of got introduced to you through how COVID played out. And it was kind of this interesting story that, and I'll let you tell it, but in early COVID, everything shut down, everybody stayed home, and there was seniors that were also staying home, but not actually getting fed.
Yeah.
Can you talk about kind of, and how the community, I know Ask Luigi, for instance, really helped there, and how the community came together during COVID?
Yeah, so we had been working only in the Veterans Manor at that time, so we partner with them. However, as I got introduced to this new population of seniors in the Downtown Eastside who had experienced homelessness, I started learning that seniors actually make up 24% of our homeless population in Metro Vancouver. And I'm going to guess nobody knows that because they are quiet. They come from a generation that doesn't ask for help. They don't want to receive a handout. And so as I was learning this, we were working with the provincial government trying to find a way to help seniors who are becoming homeless, and not only reacting to those who are already homeless, but actually preventing more seniors from becoming homeless. And so when COVID hit, as I walked off an airplane,
Right.
I was about to go to Maui to vacation with my family, and I got off the plane. It was March 13th, and the world shut down. So I'm very thankful I got off that airplane. But we recognize that we're all being asked to self-isolate, and the people who are the most vulnerable are seniors. However, low-income seniors living in housing have no access to food, for example. They don't have Costco or, delivery. They don't know how to use a computer, all those different things. And they don't have the money for it. It's expensive. And so we designed a meal delivery program. So within 48 hours, we were up and running, delivering meals funded through BC Housing. They were so incredible. They were so reactive with us, responded so quickly. So we were able to get meals door to door to the seniors living at the Veterans Manor. Within a couple of weeks, I realized we had hundreds, if not thousands, of other seniors across the Lower Mainland who were not receiving any helps whatsoever. So I reached out to the business community, people who had supported us over the years. I watched, so right across the street from us is Ask for Luigi on Alexander Street. And Jen and Nick Rossi are good friends of mine. They've been supporting Wholeway House for many years. And I reached out, I saw she had to lay off 90 employees. Everybody had to lay off everybody. And so I said, would you help us create healthy meals for seniors if I can get the funding to feed them? And she said, absolutely, we'll do whatever we can. And even before I asked her that, her staff had been making meals for my staff. They were using whatever food they had left in their kitchens to feed my frontline staff who were working 12-hour days minimum. And so, and then the other one was the Dirty Apron and the Eden Cafe. So we worked with Chef David Robertson for many years. He used to be on my board of directors. And they came together, and I was so thankful to work with the business community over the years, because in times when I was in need, they were there for me. And now we were all able to like do this together, and I could trust them and they knew what they were doing. So we expanded our meal delivery program across 6 different housing providers to 19 buildings within 4 days. We were up and running, delivering meals to 19 buildings with low-income seniors, people with disabilities, vulnerable residents who were sick. And my staff were going in and doing door-to-door delivery, which was incredible to see, during that time when, everyone was just in lockdown mode, and they stepped up to the plate, and they came and said, literally and figuratively, and provided plates of food at a very affordable cost, so that we could help seniors. We ended up serving nearly 300,000 meals, and in about a year and a half. It was a lot, but I really trained. We went from 3 employees to 20 employees overnight, and I trained the staff to say, "You're not DoorDash. Do not leave those boxes of food at that door without saying hello, without checking in. How are you doing? Do you need anything?" Because people were so afraid, and we just wanted to be able to dispel a bit of that fear and keep people healthy mentally. Also with seniors, we saw their decline, like their cognitive decline, being alone all the time. Again, they don't have as much access to technology and things that kept other people connected. So we were their only human connection. Twice a week, they got to see a delivery staff, and we were checking in and making sure they were doing okay.
We've had a recent government change at the municipal level, and of course at the provincial level, David Eby. Are you optimistic about changes at the municipal and provincial level?
I am. I think, well, I'll share. David Eby helped, before he became the premier, he was the Minister of Housing and our Attorney General. And I had a 15-minute meeting with him. He was the catalyst for our pilot project. So we received a pilot project with BC Housing for low-income seniors buildings. Again, I was really on my soapbox saying, please, can we be proactive? The biggest critique of government is that we're always reactive, and it's so expensive. It's so much more expensive to react to a problem than to be preventative. And we're seeing this stream of seniors becoming homeless. We're all seeing it. It's 24%, like everyone in my sector can read the stats. And I said, please, can we look at supporting seniors in housing? We have over 200,000 seniors in renters in our province. And thousands of them rely on subsidized housing. And so those seniors who are in subsidized housing are the ones who are the most at risk of slipping through the cracks. It's right between housing and health. They don't need to go to assisted living, but they need some support. So David Eby got me another meeting with BC Housing, and within the next 15 minutes, we had a pilot project up and running for a year. We'll have the results of that coming out, but it's incredible to see a government that says, help us. You're an expert in this. Help us. How do we do this? And we already have the results. And not only that, they said, we're going to give you the funding to do a program evaluation. We want to make sure we have the data to back this up, that this is working. And I think something that's really important in our municipal government as well, and I work with a few of the city councillors, and I'm really thankful that they actually take the time to come see what we're doing. Rebecca Bly and Pete Fry have been really involved in Whole Way House, and I'm so thankful for that support. And what they've said is, this is what we need. We need compassionate care for people with accountability. We need to see that it's working. Are we moving forward? And if we're not, how do we adjust? How do we adapt what we're doing? How do we adapt the support services to ensure that this is actually helping, that we're actually reducing homelessness, that we're actually reducing the number of deaths, that we're, helping people have dignified housing.
Right. And you mentioned before there's an audit situation that you're potentially going to be involved in.
Yeah.
Like what is that? Can you speak to that? What does that look like? And one of the things I was just thinking of, and it speaks to what you just mentioned about looking at results, is how do you what obviously positive results are positive results,
Yeah.
but how do you actually quantify the return on the investment, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
I think offline before we went live?
Yeah. Well, the City of Vancouver just hired an auditor general, which I think is a really responsible thing to do as taxpayers, to have somebody going in and looking at our system. So he just actually released his first report on the building permit fees on that system. Is it a good system? Are we being effective and efficient? So you can read that online in the City of Vancouver. But he asked me to join his advisory committee. And I really appreciated that. It was under advisement and from City Council because I sit on the Seniors Advisory Committee as well. And to have somebody who goes in and audits how our city is spending money, I think is a very wise thing to do. I think as taxpayers, that's something we want, right? How is this working? Is it effective? Is it efficient? And I've always said, even though I run a charity, I do come from a business mentality and I look at an ROI, like, is what I'm doing effective? What is the return on the investment? The return on the investment is, are people's lives being changed? Not only are we keeping people housed, our retention rate at the Veterans Manor, so bringing people in direct from homelessness or SROs, seniors who have been homeless or inappropriately housed, was like 97%. That's unheard of. It's unheard of that people who have been homeless, there's a cycle of homelessness. And what I saw when I was running an SRO, one thing I really recognized was, I was like, this is stupid. We spend all this money getting somebody housed and they finally get housed and then there's no support in place to help them remain housed. And so they become homeless again. I was like, is anybody noticing this? Like they stay a couple months maybe and then they either get evicted or because of behavior, because of damages, because of violence, or they've spent all their money, there's no rent anymore, or they just take off. And I would hear the psychology behind it. They would say, oh, I'm staying at. Not I live at, I'm staying at. Because you don't even want to admit that you live here or that this is your home. And so with the Avalon, we saw that they took pride. They were like fixing up their units and they were like, look, come see, I put up decorations. And this was now a home because we connected them together and made it very healthy and safe. But again, there's that accountability there. And I think that's something that's missing. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Sometimes I just go off on a tangent.
But it is. Back to the idea of auditing. It strikes me that as you were speaking there, and I can't remember if it was CBC or Daily Hive or what. Somebody recently published photos of an SRO, I think, that were like, oh my God, that's why people, when you go, oh, there's a unit, but they don't stay. You're like, oh, this is what the common bathroom looks like. Oh, no wonder you'd rather be in a tent that's your own.
Yeah.
But when you're speaking about this, I was thinking back to those images and thinking, there's changes that have to, clearly something's not working.
Yeah.
In the great majority of cases.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I've worked a lot with the prison system and things, and I've heard people say, just speak about how they can be and you don't know what they're capable of. I'm like, I work with them the day before prison. I work with them the day after prison, and they don't treat me that way, or they don't. So I really believe, and I teach my staff this, we set the tone, we set the atmosphere. So for example, when you come to a Whole Way House program, if you came to, a morning coffee program, every person that we work with has been capable of or has done things that would be, illegal or inappropriate or disrespectful. However, we set up the atmosphere that when they walk in, they match it. You match the environment. And so, when you walk into a spa, nobody has to tell you to be quiet. There's like trickling water and low music and to be quiet. And when you walk into Rogers Arena for a Canucks game, nobody has to tell you to yell and cheer and be loud and jump up and down because there's lights flashing and there's loud music and there's smoke everywhere.
Right.
So we do the same thing in our housing. We set the tone. I don't go in and be like, you need to change, you need to stop doing drugs, and you need to. No, I just set the tone. Here's the atmosphere of respect. There's an atmosphere of literally it's a mutual exchange and people rise to the occasion. It's human nature. It is in our nature to rise to that, set a bar, and we will match it. We will meet it. And again, coming from a trauma-informed approach, I understand that I work with people who have gone through unbelievable abuse and trauma and horrific stories. I've heard horrific stories that I wish I didn't know. And honestly, I come to that with compassion and love and empathy. And then we set the tone to say, and you deserve better. You deserve to live in a home that is safe and clean and supportive. And you deserve to have friends and family around you. And so really changing that tone to saying, yeah, this is okay. This is what you want. This is okay. Like, no, like let's provide better. I think it really does change the way people behave when you treat them with that type of respect. And I don't believe respect means, hey, everyone just do whatever you want. That's not how society works. I don't think that's loving at all.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. So maybe as a final, I don't know if I have two final kind of questions. One is just, and you spoke to Holway House at the beginning, kind of the nuts and bolts of where you're active, but in terms of actual buildings, so where are you? Where is Holway House right now? What's a plan? And then I guess obviously, what can people do to help? Is it just money? I mean, money's good.
Cold hard cash is always helpful.
Yeah, but like, are you looking for people? Because I mentioned this to my wife, and she was like, "Oh, we should, get our daughter and go down." I was like, I don't know if they want us down there, or if we're, I don't know how to cook. So I guess one is the number of buildings you're in, the plans. Is it an expansionary plan? And what people can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So over the last year and a half, we expanded into 9 buildings, 6 last year alone. So we are operating, we have 3 in the Downtown Eastside and on the edge of Chinatown, which you got to come visit. As we have the Veterans Manor in Shiloh House and Alexander House. So that's low-income seniors who are at risk or who are just very low income, and we provide our support there. And then across Vancouver, we have a couple more. We have one in Burnaby, and then we partner with Union Gospel Mission as well. So we work with transitional housing, people coming out of recovery, and then we also have one family site out in Surrey. So we work with kids in an after-school program in 75 low-income family townhouses out there. In terms of what we need, honestly, and yes, of course, finances are so helpful. What happened was we expanded so quickly and we received funding from the government for our staff. So we are funded for our staffing model, which I'm so thankful for. So when people make donations, it goes 100% towards the programs. It goes towards getting someone birthday cake every month when we have a birthday party. It goes towards putting gas in our van so we can go visit people in the hospital. It goes towards bringing people on outings. We love to use our vans to take seniors to stay active. So we go, I see on Instagram all the time, my staff are taking them to like Pacific Spirit Regional Park. And, they go to these great places and they want to go on adventures and they want to get out of the neighborhood. They want to feel safe. But it also goes towards helping when somebody moves in, we create a welcome package. We want to set them up for success and say, we're so glad you live here. This is your home now. And so, we set them up with like pots and pans and sheets and pillows and blankets and all the things that will make you feel at home, but also some treats, right? Some coffee and cookies and things. So donations are so appreciated. Just that our services will never be interrupted because we do rely on government funding for our staffing model. Those donations 100% mean that our programs will go on. It means that seniors have a reason to get up in the morning and take a shower and comb their hair because they're going to morning coffee to see their friends. And so we're really appreciative of that. In terms of volunteers, we're really excited this year. We're bringing back our volunteer program kind of in full force. Obviously, with COVID, we had to keep starting and stopping. And so we love to have people come in. And sometimes that means helping us prepare and set up for a program. Sometimes that means sitting down and having a cup of coffee with a senior and just talking and giving them that sense of community and normalcy in their lives. It brings fresh life. It brings, new people in. And so we're really excited about that. And people can sign up to volunteer at holwayhouse.ca, as well as donations there as well. But we're really thankful. As I said before, I really believe in, and it's funny because I work in a charity, but I really believe in like social capitalism in the way that like the better our economy is doing in Vancouver, the better our society is doing, the more we're able to help and reach out. And I've always been raised that way. Like when we have, how can we help? And so, but if I don't have, I can't help.
Right.
And so I really believe in that. And as I shared with the kitchen table group, like Ask for Luigi and the Poorhouse and the Dirty Apron and everybody coming on board, if they hadn't been successful in their businesses, they wouldn't have been able to help us during that time. And we wouldn't have been able to serve over 800 seniors, meals. So I think to me, that cycle is just so natural that it's how do we work together? It shouldn't just be government pumping out money all the time, but like, how can we work together? How can we use I always like say time, talent, and treasure?
Makes a lot of sense. Well, maybe we'll leave it there. But Jenny, we do have this section called the 5 Wire, 5 lighthearted questions that we end every show with.
Okay.
Can you stick around for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so question number 1 is, what is one book that you've read recently that you would recommend for our listeners?
We are reading right now Dare to Lead by Brene Brown as a leadership team, and I love it. It is so challenging and so great. It's actually helped me in so many difficult conversations that I like to not have to deal with. And I'm like, no, just go head on, get in there.
That's
And,
my wife's favorite book, I think. So
Is
yeah,
it?
that's a
Really?
good one.
She's a great leader.
I feel like tackling difficult conversations. We were talking about this morning. It's often, what did you say? You had a good line. Time doesn't.
Yeah. But time doesn't age well. Or time doesn't age
No,
well.
that's
Bad
not
news
it.
doesn't
Bad
age.
news doesn't age well.
Age
That's what
well.
you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Absolutely.
Yeah. In the last few years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Oh my goodness. I believe in rhythms. So a lot in our culture, we talk about balance, like people are trying to find balance. I don't believe balance exists. I believe in rhythms. And I think when you have a set rhythm, no matter what season you're in, a busy season, a hard season, an easy season, if you keep those rhythms steady, then it's going to stay flowing. So whether your rhythm is to, wake up and exercise for 30 minutes and then meditate, or whatever it is, it shouldn't change with the season. So I just believe in like rhythms.
Oh,
Keep the rhythm going.
Keep the rhythm going.
like surfing or something.
Yeah. I don't, because balance doesn't, I don't know. We have 4 seasons. They're not balanced. It's not like partially cold and partially hot. It's balance, like it's a rhythm.
Right.
You
Yeah.
follow a rhythm. And I think it makes it easier to like hit the wave. You're like, okay, a big wave's coming. I got to keep this rhythm. And I learned that during COVID. I lost some of my rhythms and I even like struggled with my health physically. And I was like, got to get back on those rhythms. That's really
Right.
important. And like taking that quiet time for myself. And yeah.
That's a great one.
Thanks.
Question number 3. What have you been binge watching lately, or a movie recommendation?
I watched, okay, this is embarrassing. I watched, what was it called? From Scratch on Netflix. The girl goes to Italy and falls in love with this Italian guy. So, of course, I was like, oh, swooning. But then it turns really sad. And my mom had told me to watch it. And I took a picture of myself, like full blown ugly crying. I was like, I've not cried this hard in a really long time. I was like, you are mean. I can't believe you told me to watch this. So that was my binge.
Scratch.
From Scratch. Yeah, he's a chef from Italy. So of course, I was like, it's not a terrible idea.
I had a friend of mine tell me the other day that his wife is really into Korean dramas right now,
Oh.
which apparently are on Netflix. And he's like, don't ever get into them. He's like, I can never live up to the romance of Korean men or these dramas. He said it's like ruined his.
Yeah.
He's
Expectations are out of whack.
Yeah, exactly.
Favorite band or music?
Oh, I don't know. I love music. I recently was in Nashville, and I'll just say overall,
wow.
like country music, it brought back my love for country music again. So I think I got to dive deep into that again.
And was Nashville, our other brother took a trip there and was like, it was unbelievable.
So the city itself, coming from Vancouver, it's hard to be impressed with. Like the city's pretty ugly. It's not like a pretty city, but major construction happening for sure. Big real estate. I was like, what? I was like, I just counted 17 cranes in this like 3-block radius. But the music scene was so cool.
Culturally it would probably be unreal.
It was unreal. Like you can just walk from bar to bar, and it's just amazing band. I mean, like it was really cool and just fun. Like the atmosphere is fun, very chill. So I'll cop out a little bit and say country music right now. I've been really into it. Yeah.
And last but not least, something that you've purchased for under $1,500 that has had a positive impact in the last little while here.
$19.99. I just bought this thing on Amazon, and it stretches my neck. You like lay on it and you hang your neck backwards. Phenomenal. Changing my life daily right now. I'm like, I can turn my neck again.
That's actually a good one. $19.99.
Thank you. I love Amazon.
Well, Jenny, you mentioned your website before, but it's worth asking again. People that are interested in helping out or learning more about Holway House, what's the best way?
Holwayhouse.ca. We are a registered charity, so any donation receives a tax receipt. And then, of course, if you want to come down for a tour, you want to volunteer, love to show you around. It's a great way to get connected to the community, and we're always looking for helpers.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for coming down to Holway House. Honestly, I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, it was great.
Awesome.